So here's some food for thought as you're thinking about if you want to use controller as syntax or the classic $sign scope. Let's say you've got a controller like shell here, and you're using classic scope. Well, I've already got the scope for my properties like title and maybe some functions in here too. But now I might be tempted to use something like a watch or a digest or a broadcast in here. Well, I could type that in, but now this is a place where I might have a signal going on, wait a minute, not necessarily something I want to do inside the controller. Why? Maybe I want to encapsulate this logic in more a reusable place, like a factory or a service or a provider. So here I've got the broadcast. Maybe that's a better place I could put that. Instead, I could say, well, I wanted to send a message when something happened, so maybe I could call some kind of a service like my message service and have the message service say, all right, go ahead and send the message. And that message could be something like, I don't know, hello. Well, where does that come from? Well, that's when I start injecting that and say, all right, let me go ahead and inject that message service. And I would create that somewhere else, and we can inject it like this. Now, this is just a way we can actually use separation of concerns and separate out our different features. So now the message service can be reused in multiple controllers. So what I'm saying is that it's not necessarily a bad thing to use scope broadcast or apply or watch. It just may not be the place you want to use it inside of a controller. But you might be tempted to use it if scope is already there. So kind of a side effect of using controller as or classic scope is that with the controller as, the scope is removed immediately from the scope. As you can see that here, in example 3 we looked at earlier, there's no scope being injected, so it's a lot harder for me to say, okay, let me go ahead and do scope.broadcast. Well, scope doesn't exist here, so I can't do that in the first place. So if we go back to the example with the classic scope, now we can just see we can use it as a service. I call the classic scope the chameleon because it can do many things, like data binding, broadcasting, emitting, digest cycle, watches, a whole bunch of stuff here. And let me be clear, this is not something that's going to break your code one way or the other by using scope inside of your controller. I'm just saying that using controller as, I feel, helps me write cleaner code.